My date demanded I pay for her friend's meals. She didn't know I spoke her language. The moment Sophia started whispering in Portuguese to her 3 friends who had randomly shown up at Chez Laurent, I knew this date was about to go sideways. What she didn't know was that I'd spent 2 years working in Sao Paulo, and every scheming word coming out of her mouth was landing crystal clear in my ears. "Order the lobster," she murmured to the brunette across from me, her voice barely audible over the restaurant's ambient jazz. "And you get the wagyu. Make sure you get drinks too, expensive ones." This idiot is loaded. I kept my face neutral, pretending to study the wine list while my jaw clenched. Sophia turned back to me with that same dazzling smile that had caught my attention on Bumble 3 weeks ago. "I hope you don't mind that my friends joined us, Marcus," she said sweetly, her accent making my name sound exotic. "They were just in a neighborhood and wanted to meet you." "Right. The neighborhood." Chez Laurent was tucked away in the most expensive part of downtown, hardly a place you just stumble upon. But I smiled back, my software engineer brain already calculating exactly how I wanted this to play out. "Of course not," I said, signaling the waiter. "The more the merrier." The friends, Lucia, Gabriella, and Carmen, had introduced themselves with theatrical surprise at this coincidence. Now they were scanning the menu like kids in a candy store, speaking in rapid Portuguese about how much they could squeeze out of the gringo. "He looks desperate," Carmen whispered, not even bothering to look up from her menu. "Sophia said he's been single for 8 months. We can milk this." 8 months. That part was accurate, unfortunately. 8 months since my last relationship imploded, 8 months of disappointing dates and ghosted conversations. I'd actually been excited about tonight. Sophia's profile had suggested she was finishing her master's in environmental science, passionate about conservation, looking for something real. Her messages had been thoughtful, funny even. Now she was coordinating a financial ambush in a language she assumed I didn't speak. The waiter appeared, pen poised. "Good evening, folks. Can I start you with drinks?" "Yes," Sophia said, then immediately switched to Portuguese to coach her friends. "Remember, top shelf everything. This tech guy probably makes 6 figures." She wasn't wrong about that either, but watching her orchestrate this con was making my stomach turn. I thought about standing up, calling her out right there, walking away. It would have been the smart move. Instead, I found myself curious about how far she'd take this. "I'll have a scotch," I said. "Macallan 18, neat." Sophia's eyes lit up, probably calculating the $30 price tag. "I'll have champagne." "The Dom Perignon." "Excellent choice," the waiter nodded. One by one, her friends ordered drinks that cost more than most people's entire dinner. Gabriella got a cocktail made with 50-year-old cognac. Carmen ordered a flight of premium whiskeys. Lucia went for a bottle of wine, not a glass, a bottle, that I could see listed at $180. As the waiter disappeared, Sophia leaned closer to me, her perfume filling the space between us. For a split second, I almost forgot about the scam. She really was beautiful. "So tell me about your work," she said, placing her hand on my arm. "I want to know everything about you." Everything except whether I spoke Portuguese, apparently. I smiled, settling in for what was about to become the most expensive lesson of her life. The drinks arrived, and I watched Sophia's eyes widen slightly as the waiter set down the Dom Perignon. $85 a glass. She was doing math in her head, and I could practically see the dollar signs reflecting in her pupils. "To new connections," she said, raising her glass with what I had to admit was Oscar-worthy sincerity. "To honesty," I replied, clinking my glass against hers. The irony wasn't lost on me, even if it sailed right over her head. As we ordered food, the Portuguese commentary continued like a live sports broadcast of my financial destruction. Lucia went for the $75 sea base, but not before Sophia whispered, "Get an appetizer too, the caviar service is $120. Carmen ordered the dry-aged ribeye at $89, while Gabriella selected both the lobster bisque and the wagyu tenderloin, creating a $140 combination that she giggled about in rapid Portuguese. "This is like Christmas," Carmen muttered, breaking off a piece of the complimentary bread that probably cost more per loaf than most restaurants charged for entrees. "How long do we think we can stretch this out?" "At least 2 hours," Sophia replied in Portuguese, then immediately switched to English to ask me, "Marcus, you don't mind if we get dessert later, do you? I have such a sweet tooth." "Whatever makes you happy," I said, taking a sip of my scotch and doing some quick math. We were already approaching $400 in drinks alone, and we hadn't even gotten our appetizers. My phone buzzed with a text from my buddy Jake. "How's the date going?" "She is cool as her profile." I glanced at Sophia, who was now explaining to her friends in Portuguese how she'd crafted her dating profile to attract successful, lonely guys who'd spend money to impress. Apparently, she'd researched which hobbies and interests appealed to tech workers, then molded her entire persona around that data. "Environmental science?" Carmen asked in Portuguese. "You hate camping?" "Conservation?" Gabriella added with a smirk. "You throw plastic bottles in regular trash?" Sophia shrugged. "Men like women who seem deep and caring. I tell them what they want to hear." I typed back to Jake, learning a lot about human nature. The appetizers arrived. Sophia had ordered the oyster selection for the table without asking me, naturally, and I watched the show continue. Every few minutes, one of them would make a comment in Portuguese about how gullible I seemed, how easy this was, how they should do this more often. Sophia was apparently the mastermind. This wasn't her first rodeo. "Last month I got some finance bro to pay for a weekend in Napa," she whispered to Lucia while I was supposedly distracted by my phone. 3 days, 4 of us, $2,800. He thought he was being romantic. My scotch suddenly tasted bitter. This wasn't just about tonight's dinner, this was a pattern, a business model built on exploiting lonely people looking for connection. How many guys had sat in my exact position, hopeful and naive, while Sophia and her crew planned their financial ambush in a language they assumed was safe? "Marcus," Sophia said, turning back to me with that megawatt smile. "Tell me about Sao Paulo. I saw on your Instagram you traveled there for work." My blood froze. She'd done her homework, stalked my social media, probably crafted this entire Portuguese strategy knowing I'd posted photos from Brazil. She thought she was being clever, maybe even testing to see if I'd reveal any language skills. Beautiful city, I said carefully. Though I mostly stayed in the business district. Didn't really get to experience the culture. Sophia's smile turned predatory. In Portuguese, she whispered to Carmen, perfect. He's completely clueless. That's when I decided exactly how this night was going to end. The main courses arrived like a parade of my financial doom. Lucia's sea base came with a $35 truffle supplement she'd added in Portuguese when the waiter wasn't looking at me. Carmen's ribeye was accompanied by a $28 side of roasted bone marrow that she described to Sophia as pure greed, but why not? And Gabriella's wagyu practically needed its own zip code on the plate, glistening under the restaurant's ambient lighting like an edible mortgage payment. Sophia had ordered the duck confit, a modest $52 compared to her friend's selections, but she'd made up for it by requesting a second bottle of wine. Not just any wine, of course. She pointed to something in the triple digits while speaking Portuguese to the sommelier, who'd nodded appreciatively at her excellent taste. This is incredible, she said to me in English, cutting into her duck with theatrical precision. I've never been somewhere this nice before. The lie rolled off her tongue so smoothly I almost admired the craftsmanship. In Portuguese, she'd just finished telling Lucia about a restaurant in Miami where she'd pulled the same con on a real estate developer last spring. My phone buzzed with another text, this time from my sister Sarah, date night. Hope she's the one. Face blowing a kiss. I stared at the message, feeling something shift in my chest. Sarah had been worried about me since my breakup with Emma. 8 months of watching her little brother strike out repeatedly had turned her into my unofficial dating coach, sending me encouraging texts before every first date, celebrating the rare second dates, commiserating over the inevitable disappointments. She wanted this to work out for me. Hell, part of me had wanted it to work out too. Everything okay? Sophia asked, noticing my expression. Just work, I lied, pocketing my phone. You know how it is. She nodded sympathetically, then immediately turned to Gabriella and said in Portuguese, he's checking his bank account. Probably seeing if he has enough credit limit left. Carmen nearly choked on her wine trying not to laugh. That's when the evening took an interesting turn. A middle-aged man in an expensive suit approached our table, his face lighting up when he saw me. Marcus Chen. Holy shit, what are the odds? I looked up to see Robert Mendoza, a venture capitalist I'd worked with on a fintech startup 2 years ago. More importantly for tonight's purposes, Robert was fluent in about 6 languages, including Portuguese. Rob. What are you doing here? I stood to shake his hand, my mind already racing with possibilities. Client dinner just wrapped up, he said, gesturing toward a table of serious-looking people in the corner. Had to come say hi when I spotted you. How's the new company treating you? Can't complain, I said, then turned to the table. Rob, I'd like you to meet Sophia and her friends. Sophia's smile was radiant as she extended her hand, but I caught the slight tension in her shoulders. Having another person at the table wasn't part of her plan. Pleasure to meet you, Rob said, then did something I could have kissed him for. He continued in perfect Portuguese, are you enjoying your evening? The silence that followed was deafening. 4 wine glasses froze halfway to lips. Sophia's face went through several colors before settling on a pale shade of panic. Yes, very much, she stammered back in Portuguese, clearly thrown off by the unexpected linguistic curveball. Rob raised an eyebrow and glanced at me. In Portuguese, he said, your friend seems nervous. Is everything all right here? I had 2 choices, blow my cover now or let Sophia dig herself deeper. The software engineer in me chose optimization, maximum impact for maximum lesson learned. Everything's perfect, I replied in Portuguese, watching Sophia's fork clatter against her plate. Just getting to know each other better. The look of absolute terror that crossed Sophia's face was worth every penny this dinner was going to cost me. Rob's eyes darted between Sophia and me, clearly picking up on the sudden shift in atmosphere. In Portuguese, he said, well, this is interesting. How long have you 2 been pretending Marcus doesn't speak our language? Sophia's face had gone from panic to something approaching nausea. She shot desperate glances at her 3 friends, who were suddenly very interested in their expensive entrees. Carmen was practically hiding behind her $89 ribeye. Rob, I said in English, clapping him on the shoulder, thanks for stopping by. We should catch up soon. He grinned, understanding the dismissal but clearly enjoying the drama. Absolutely. Sophia, he added in Portuguese, enjoy the rest of your evening. I have a feeling it's going to be memorable. After he walked away, the table fell into the kind of silence usually reserved for funeral parlors. Sophia stared at her duck like it might provide answers. Lucia had stopped eating entirely. Gabriella was doing something with her napkin that looked suspiciously like calculating escape routes. So, I said in perfect Portuguese, setting down my scotch glass with deliberate precision, should we discuss the lobster strategy, or would you prefer to start with the Dom Perignon budget analysis? Carmen made a sound like a deflating balloon. Sophia's mouth opened and closed several times before any words came out. Marcus, I can explain, she began in English. Poor favor, I interrupted, staying in Portuguese. I think we're past the point of translations, don't you? The waiter chose that exact moment to appear with dessert menus, his timing so perfect it felt scripted. How was everything this evening? Can I interest anyone in our dessert selection? We have a chocolate souffle that's quite popular. Sophia looked at him like he'd suggested jumping off a bridge. We might need a moment. Of course. No rush. He disappeared, leaving us in our linguistic standoff. I leaned back in my chair, studying the 4 women who'd spent the last 90 minutes discussing my gullibility in what they thought was their secret language. The current bill was sitting somewhere north of $600, and we hadn't even reached Sophia's planned dessert finale. 2 years in Sao Paulo, I said conversationally in Portuguese. Worked with a development team there. Amazing how much you can learn when you're actually trying to connect with people instead of rob them. Lucia finally found her voice. Look, this got out of hand. Did it? I asked. Because from where I'm sitting, this went exactly according to plan. Your plan. The only variable you didn't account for was basic due diligence. Sophia's environmental science persona was cracking like cheap paint. The passionate conservationist who'd messaged me about ocean cleanup projects was now fidgeting with her jewelry and avoiding eye contact. The Napa weekend, I continued. Finance bro, $2,800, 3 days. How did that one end? Did he figure it out, or did you just ghost him afterward? Her face told me everything I needed to know. Jesus, Sophia, Carmen whispered in Portuguese. How many languages does this guy speak? Currently wondering that myself, I replied in English, enjoying the way they all flinched. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Sarah, can't wait to hear all about her. Bring her to Sunday dinner if it goes well. Smiling face with heart eyes. I showed Sophia the message. My sister's excited to meet you. She thinks I might have finally found someone genuine. The guilt that flashed across Sophia's face was almost enough to make me feel bad for her. Almost. Marcus, please, she started. Please what? Please pretend I didn't hear you call me an idiot in 3 different ways. Please ignore the financial planning session you held about my credit limit. The chocolate souffle was looking less and less likely by the minute. The waiter returned, clearly sensing the shift in our table's energy but maintaining his professional composure. Have we decided on dessert this evening? I looked directly at Sophia. Actually, I think we need to discuss the check situation first. Her 3 friends exchanged panicked glances. In Portuguese, Lucia whispered, should we just leave? And go where? Carmen hissed back. We took an Uber here together. Ladies, I said in Portuguese, I can still hear you. The waiter's eyebrows shot up slightly, apparently he spoke some Portuguese too. This night was full of surprises. Sir, is there an issue with the service tonight? He asked diplomatically. The service has been impeccable, I replied. But I think there's been some confusion about payment arrangements. Sophia finally found her voice, switching to English with a tremor I hadn't heard before. Marcus, I know how this looks. How it looks? I interrupted. Sophia, you spent the last 2 hours providing live commentary on my financial exploitation. You coached your friends through ordering the most expensive items on the menu. You literally called me desperate and discussed how to milk the situation. Gabriella was now fully hiding behind her wine glass. We were just joking around, she mumbled in Portuguese. Were you? I pulled out my phone and opened the voice memo app I'd been running since Robert showed up. Because I've got about 15 minutes of audio here that suggests otherwise. The color drained completely from Sophia's face. You recorded us. I recorded dinner conversation at my own table, I corrected. Turns out when people conspire to defraud you in what they think is a foreign language, documentation becomes important. Carmen leaned forward desperately. Look, we'll split the check. We never meant. Never meant what? To follow through on the plan you spent an hour discussing? Or never meant to get caught? The waiter was now backing away slowly, probably to alert management about the brewing situation. I couldn't blame him, our table had gone from romantic first date to potential crime scene documentation in about 5 minutes. Sophia reached across the table toward my hand, her eyes welling up. Marcus, please. I know I screwed up, but we can work this out. Maybe we could start over. Start over. I stared at her in disbelief. Sophia, you researched my social media to plan this con. You crafted an entire fake personality based on what you thought would appeal to lonely tech guys. Your friends are here because you've apparently turned this into a regular income stream. That's not, she began, then stopped, probably realizing that denial was pointless when I'd heard every word. The environmental science degree. I continued. Real or part of the character profile? Her silence was answer enough. Lucia suddenly stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I can't do this anymore. Sophia, this is insane. We need to leave. Sit down, Sophia snapped in Portuguese. We can still fix this. Fix what? Carmen demanded, also in Portuguese. He speaks our language. He's been listening to everything. He probably knows about the Miami guy, the weekend in Santa Barbara, all of it. I didn't know about Santa Barbara, but I filed that information away for later. There's more. I asked innocently in Portuguese. Carmen's hand flew to her mouth as she realized she'd just revealed another operation. Sophia looked like she might be sick. Marcus, I can explain everything. Give me 5 minutes, and I'll tell you the truth about everything. The truth, I repeated slowly. That's an interesting concept coming from someone who's been lying since before we even sat down. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was lecturing her about honesty while secretly planning my own revelation. But there was a difference between letting someone reveal their true nature and actively deceiving them for financial gain. At least, I hoped there was. The waiter reappeared with what I could only describe as reinforcements, a well-dressed woman who screamed management and a security guard trying to look casual by the bar. Sophia noticed them too, her eyes darting nervously between the approaching manager and the exit. Mr. Chin. The manager's voice was professionally calm. I'm Diana Martinez, the evening manager. I understand there might be some concern about tonight's arrangements. Apparently our waiter had briefed her thoroughly. I appreciated his discretion in not making a scene, but the cavalry had definitely arrived. Just a misunderstanding about the check, I said diplomatically. Nothing that can't be resolved. Sophia shot me a grateful look that lasted exactly until I continued. These ladies were under the impression I'd be covering their meals, but I think there's been some confusion about that arrangement. What? Lucia blurted out in Portuguese. You can't just abandon us here. Actually, Diana said smoothly, and I caught her slight accent, podemos resolver isso rapidamente. Jesus Christ. The manager spoke Portuguese too. Sophia looked like she might actually pass out. How many people in this restaurant speak? Carmen started, then caught herself. It's Los Angeles, Diana replied in perfect Portuguese. We hire multilingual staff for a reason. Now, what seems to be the actual problem here? I had to give Sophia credit, even cornered, she was trying to maintain some control. There's no problem, she said in English, her voice steadying. Marcus, you offered to pay for dinner when you invited me out. That was our understanding. Our understanding, I repeated. Based on what conversation exactly? She faltered for a moment. When you suggested this restaurant, you said. I said I was looking forward to getting to know you better, I finished. I don't recall making any statements about financing your friend's retirement plans. Carmen snorted despite herself, then immediately looked horrified at her reaction. Diana was watching this play out with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen every possible restaurant drama. Perhaps we could settle this simply. The current bill is $847 including service. How would you prefer to handle payment? $847. For context, my mortgage payment was $2,200. This wasn't going to bankrupt me, but it was a significant chunk of money for what had turned into dinner theater. I'll cover my meal and drinks, I said. The ladies can sort out their portions however they'd like. Sophia's composure finally cracked. You can't be serious. Marcus, this is humiliating. Humiliating, I repeated slowly. You know what's humiliating, Sophia? Sitting through dinner listening to someone calculate how much money they can extract from you based on your perceived loneliness. You want to know what's really humiliating? I pulled out my phone and showed her Sarah's earlier text. My sister sent me this. She's been worried about me for 8 months, watching me strike out over and over again. She was genuinely excited that I might have found someone real tonight. Sophia stared at the message, her expression shifting to something that might have been shame. Sarah's making plans to invite you to Sunday dinner, I continued. She's probably telling my parents about you right now. My mom's probably already wondering if she should dust off her wedding planning binders. Marcus, Sophia tried to interrupt. I haven't told them about a date in 6 months, I said. Because I was tired of seeing that hopeful look fade when things inevitably fell apart. But tonight felt different. You seemed different. The table had gone completely silent. Even Diana was listening intently, probably gathering intelligence for her incident report. So yeah, Sophia. If you want to talk about humiliation, let's start there. Carmen cleared her throat awkwardly. Look, we'll figure out our part of the check. Sophia, just call us an Uber. Wait, Sophia said suddenly, her voice desperate. Marcus, what if I told you this whole thing started as something else? I raised an eyebrow. Meaning? Meaning maybe it wasn't supposed to be a con. Maybe it just spiraled. Diana and I exchanged glances. This was getting interesting. Spiraled? I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. You're going to have to be more specific than that, Sophia. She glanced nervously at her friends, then at Diana, who was still standing there like a referee waiting to see if this verbal boxing match would require intervention. Can we talk privately for a minute? Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Absolutely not, Carmen said in Portuguese. Sophia, don't make this worse. Worse than what? I asked in Portuguese, enjoying watching Carmen flinch again. Worse than the Napa weekend. Worse than Santa Barbara. How exactly does this story end in your version, Sophia? Sophia closed her eyes for a long moment, and when she opened them, something had changed. The confident manipulator from earlier was gone, replaced by someone who looked genuinely exhausted. My name isn't Sophia Martinez, she said quietly. It's Sophia Restrepo. And I really am in grad school, but not for environmental science. I'm getting my MBA at USC. Lucia's eyes went wide. Sophia, what are you doing? I'm drowning, Sophia continued, ignoring her friend's warning look. Drowning in student debt, drowning in credit card bills, drowning in rent for a shitty apartment in Koreatown that I split with 2 other people. Diana shifted slightly, probably calculating whether this confession was heading toward territory that required more than restaurant management skills. The first time was an accident, Sophia said, her voice getting stronger. Last year, I went on a date with this guy, a real date, not planned or anything. He insisted on paying, took me somewhere expensive, and when he went to the bathroom, I joked with my friend about how much money he was spending. Just stupid commentary, you know. I kept my expression neutral, but something in her tone was different now. Less performative. But then he did pay. For everything. And I realized. She paused, seeming to gather her thoughts. I realized I hadn't spent that much money on food in months. Good food, I mean. Not ramen and dollar menu stuff. Carmen was shaking her head slowly. Sophia, don't do this. Do what? Tell the truth for once. Sophia turned back to me. The second time was intentional. And the third. Each time, I got better at it. More strategic. More strategic how? I asked, though I suspected I already knew. Research. Social media stalking. Creating profiles that matched what successful, lonely guys wanted to see. She gestured at herself. The environmental science thing. You had 3 photos from a beach cleanup on your Instagram. I figured you'd be attracted to someone who cared about the ocean. My stomach twisted. She wasn't wrong, those photos had been from a company volunteer day, but I had been genuinely proud of them. The friends showing up wasn't random either, she continued. We scope out the restaurant first. Lucia gets a table nearby, texts when you arrive, then they bump into us 20 minutes later. Jesus Christ, I muttered. You've got this down to a science. We had to, Gabriella said quietly, speaking for the first time since Robert had left. Do you know what rent costs in this city? What grad school costs? What a tank of gas costs? Diana cleared her throat. While I sympathize with financial pressures, this establishment cannot. I know, Sophia interrupted. I know what we were doing was wrong. I know it's probably illegal. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. She reached into her purse and pulled out what looked like a stack of bills, not cash, actual bills. Credit card statements, medical bills, something that looked like a student loan payment notice. $3,400 a month, she said, spreading them on the table next to her half-eaten duck. That's just the minimum payments. Rent, insurance, food, gas, that's another $2,200. I make $1,800 a month as a research assistant. I stared at the numbers. Even my software engineer brain could do that math easily enough. You're $3,800 in the hole every month, I said slowly. Before any kind of social life, clothes, emergency repairs on my car, or God forbid, wanting to go somewhere that doesn't have fluorescent lighting and a drive-through window. Carmen was looking at Sophia like she'd lost her mind. Why are you telling him this? Because maybe I'm tired of pretending, Sophia said. Tired of being someone else on every date, tired of calculating exit strategies, tired of lying about everything from my major to my favorite movie. She looked directly at me. What's my favorite movie, Marcus? I thought back to our text conversations. You said it was that documentary about coral reef restoration. I've never seen that documentary. I googled environmental documentaries and picked one that sounded impressive. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. My actual favorite movie is The Princess Bride. I've seen it probably 50 times, and I can quote the entire sword-fighting scene. Despite everything, despite the lies and the con and the $847 dinner bills sitting between us, I felt something shift in my chest. Because The Princess Bride was my favorite movie too, and I'd never told anyone about the sword-fighting scene memorization. Inconceivable, I said quietly. Sophia's eyes snapped up to mine, and for the first time all evening, her smile looked genuine. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. Diana was looking between us like we'd both lost our minds. Fair assessment, honestly. So what now? I asked. You've confessed to running dating scams, shown me your financial desperation, and somehow we've bonded over Princess Bride quotes. Where exactly does this evening go from here? Sophia wiped her eyes with her napkin, smearing what was left of her carefully applied makeup. Honestly? I have no idea. This is the first time I've told anyone the whole truth about any of this. The whole truth. I raised an eyebrow. Because 5 minutes ago you were coordinating a financial heist in Portuguese. That's fair, she admitted. But Marcus, when your friend Robert showed up and started speaking Portuguese, and then you responded. God, the look on your face. Not angry, exactly. Just disappointed. Diana had been standing there long enough that I was starting to feel bad for her. Look, about the check. Actually, Sophia interrupted, I want to pay for my portion. And I want to pay you back for whatever my friends ordered too. Carmen nearly choked on her wine. With what money? Sophia, you just showed him your bills. I'll figure it out. Sell some things, pick up extra shifts, whatever. Sophia's voice was steadier now, more determined. This ends tonight. Lucia leaned forward, lowering her voice. Sophia, think about what you're saying. You can't afford this. I can't afford not to do this, Sophia replied. Look at where we are. Look at what we've become. Carmen, you have a master's degree in psychology. Gabriella, you're a teacher. Lucia, you're training to be a nurse. And we're sitting here running cons on lonely guys because we can't make rent. The weight of that statement settled over the table like fog. Diana shifted uncomfortably, probably realizing this conversation had moved beyond restaurant management territory into something more like group therapy. The system is broken, Gabriella said quietly. Everything costs too much, nobody pays enough, and guys like Marcus, no offense, make more in a month than I make in 6. None taken, I said, though it stung because she wasn't wrong. But that doesn't justify this. Doesn't it? Carmen asked, and there was real anger in her voice now. Easy to judge when you're not choosing between groceries and gas money. I felt my own anger flare up. You think I don't understand financial pressure? You think I've never been broke? I spent 2 years sleeping on a couch in a studio apartment with 3 other guys, eating nothing but rice and beans, building websites for $50 each so I could afford coding bootcamp. That's different, Lucia said. How is it different? Because you're a man in tech, Sophia said simply. The system was designed for you to succeed eventually. For us, we're supposed to find husbands who can pay our bills. The brutal honesty of that statement hit me like a physical blow. Because part of me, the part that had been excited about impressing Sophia at an expensive restaurant, knew she wasn't entirely wrong. My phone buzzed with another text. This time it was from my mom. Sarah told me about your date. Can't wait to meet her. Should I make my famous lasagna for Sunday dinner? I showed Sophia the message. See this? My mom's already planning the menu. My sisters probably started a Pinterest board for wedding decorations. They want this to work out for me as much as I do. Why? Sophia asked genuinely. Because they're tired of watching me be alone. Because they love me and want me to be happy. Because. I paused, realizing something I'd never articulated before. Because they're probably worried I'm broken somehow. 8 months of failed dates, and they're wondering if there's something fundamentally wrong with their son. Sophia stared at me for a long moment. There's nothing wrong with you, Marcus. Says the woman who called me desperate and gullible for 2 hours straight. That wasn't about you, she said quietly. That was about us convincing ourselves that you deserved it somehow. That rich tech guys are fair game because they have everything handed to them. Diana finally stepped forward again. I hate to interrupt, but we do need to resolve the payment situation. And I have other tables that need attention. Sophia nodded, reaching for her purse. I have a debit card with maybe $200 on it. Credit cards are maxed out, but I can give you what I have as a start. Sophia, don't, Carmen pleaded. That's your grocery money for the next 2 weeks. Then I'll eat ramen for 2 weeks, Sophia said firmly. This has to stop somewhere. I watched her hands shake slightly as she pulled out a worn debit card, and something inside me broke. Not the angry, betrayed feeling from earlier, but something else. Something that felt dangerously close to empathy. Diana, I said, can we get separate checks? One for me, one for them. Of course, sir. Sophia looked up at me, confused. Marcus, what are you doing? Something probably stupid, I admitted. But first, I need you to answer one question honestly. And I mean completely honestly, no more games or manipulation. She nodded slowly. If we met under different circumstances, no financial pressure, no con, no friends coaching from the sidelines, do you think we might have actually liked each other? The question hung in the air between us like a bridge neither of us was sure we should cross. Sophia stared at me for what felt like an eternity, her mascara-smudged eyes searching my face like she was trying to solve an equation. The restaurant noise faded into background static as I waited for her answer. Yes, she said finally, so quietly I almost missed it. I think I would have really liked you. Carmen made a sound somewhere between a groan and a laugh. Sophia, this is insane. You can't just what? Sophia turned to her friend, and I saw something I hadn't seen all evening, genuine anger. Can't tell the truth for once. Can't admit that maybe this whole thing started because I was actually attracted to him. My heart did something complicated in my chest. What do you mean, started because? Sophia's cheeks flushed red. I matched with you 3 weeks ago, Marcus. We've been texting for 3 weeks. You think I coordinated all this tonight because of your bank account? Well, yeah, I said, suddenly feeling less certain about my narrative. I coordinated all this because I was terrified, she said, her voice getting stronger. Terrified that for the first time in 8 months of scam dates, I actually cared what happened. I liked our conversations. I looked forward to your texts. I spent 45 minutes getting ready tonight because I wanted to impress you. Lucia was shaking her head slowly. Sophia, what are you saying? I'm saying I brought backup because I was scared, Sophia continued, looking directly at me. Scared that if it was just the two of us, I might forget about the money and just be myself. And myself can't afford to date someone like you legitimately. Diana cleared her throat. I'm going to give you folks a few more minutes, but we do need to resolve this soon. She walked away, probably grateful to escape whatever psychological drama was unfolding at table 12. So the environmental science thing was still a lie, I said, trying to process what Sophia was telling me. The major was a lie. But Marcus, do you remember our conversation about ocean plastic 2 weeks ago? The one that went until 2 a.m. I did remember. We'd started talking about a documentary that had been trending, and somehow ended up discussing everything from marine biology to climate change to her childhood memories of beach trips with her grandmother. You said your grandmother taught you to surf in Ensenada, I said slowly. She did. And she used to cry about how polluted the beaches were getting. Everything I told you about caring about the environment was true. I figured out what you wanted to hear and amplified it. Carmen was staring at Sophia like she'd never seen her before. You never told us any of this. Because it made me vulnerable, Sophia said. Because admitting I actually liked him would have meant admitting this whole thing was fucked up from the start. My phone buzzed again. Jake, this time, dude, you've been there for 3 hours. Either this is going amazing or you're being held hostage. Should I send help? Face with tears of joy. 3 hours. Had it really been 3 hours? I looked around the restaurant and realized it had gotten significantly quieter. We were definitely past normal dinner service. Sophia, I said carefully, what were you planning for the end of tonight? Before Robert showed up and everything went sideways. She winced. Honestly? I was going to let you pay, give you a kiss goodnight that felt real enough to keep you interested, then gradually ghost you over the next week while planning the next date. With someone else. With someone else, she confirmed. Someone my friends had already researched and vetted. Gabriella finally spoke up. There's a spreadsheet, she said quietly. A what? I turned to look at her. A shared Google Doc. Names, photos, financial estimates, conversation notes. We've been systematic about it. The software engineer in me was almost impressed despite myself. How many guys are in this spreadsheet? 43, Carmen admitted. Over the last 8 months. 43 guys like me. 43 people hoping for connection, getting financial exploitation instead. The number hit me like a physical weight. Jesus Christ, I muttered. Marcus, Sophia said urgently, I know how that sounds, but what? But you felt bad about it. But you were planning to make me number 44 anyway. My anger was back, cutting through whatever sympathy I'd been building. But I deleted it, she said desperately. Yesterday. After our phone call about your sister's cooking, I went home and deleted the whole thing. The table went completely silent. Carmen's fork clattered against her plate. You did what? Lucia demanded. I deleted it, Sophia repeated, her voice steadying. The spreadsheet, the research files, the group chat where we planned everything. All of it. Sophia, that was 8 months of work, Carmen said, her voice rising. 8 months of income potential. 8 months of exploiting people who were just trying to find someone to love them, Sophia shot back. 8 months of becoming someone I don't recognize. I stared at her, trying to figure out if this was another manipulation or something genuine. Why? Why delete it yesterday? Sophia's eyes filled with tears again, but she didn't look away. Because you asked me what my biggest fear was, and I almost told you the truth. I remembered the conversation. We'd been talking about our worst dating experiences, and I'd made some joke about being afraid of dying alone with only my code for company. You said your biggest fear was disappointing people, I said slowly. And you laughed and said that was probably why I was drawn to environmental science, because the planet's expectations are pretty low right now. I had said that. It had felt like such a natural, easy moment between us. But that's not really your biggest fear, I said. No, she whispered. My biggest fear is that I'm becoming someone who's incapable of real connection. Someone who calculates the value of every interaction. Someone who can't tell the difference between performing intimacy and feeling it anymore. The weight of that confession settled over our table like a blanket. Even Carmen had stopped protesting. So you deleted the spreadsheet, I said. I deleted the spreadsheet. And I almost canceled tonight. But then I thought. She paused, wiping her eyes. I thought maybe I could just be myself. Maybe I could forget about the money and see what happened. But you brought your friends anyway. I brought my friends because I'm a coward, she said simply. Because being real with someone felt more terrifying than running another con. Diana reappeared at our table with 2 leather check folders. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we do need to close out these tables. The moment of truth had arrived, literally and figuratively. I looked at the 2 check folders Diana had placed on the table, then back at Sophia's tear-streaked face. The math was simple enough. My portion came to $127, theirs totaled $720. But the emotional calculus was infinitely more complex. Before we settle this, I said, I need to know something else. The 43 guys in your spreadsheet, what happened to them afterward? Sophia's friends exchanged uncomfortable glances. Carmen shifted in her seat, suddenly very interested in the remaining drops of her expensive whiskey flight. Most of them just moved on, Sophia said quietly. We'd gradually stop responding to texts, they'd get the hint. Most of them. Lucia cleared her throat. There were a few who kept trying. Calling, showing up at places they knew we'd be. Stalking? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Not exactly stalking, Gabriella said defensively. More like, persistent hoping. The distinction felt meaningless to me. How persistent? Sophia looked like she might be sick. There was one guy, David. Finance, like I mentioned earlier. After the Napa weekend, he started planning a proposal. My stomach dropped. A what? He bought a ring, Carmen whispered. Posted about it on Instagram, tagged Sophia, talked about how he'd never met anyone who understood him like she did. Jesus fucking Christ. I ran my hands through my hair, suddenly seeing this whole operation from a completely different angle. What did you do? We had to tell him the truth, Sophia said, tears streaming freely now. Well, part of it. I said I wasn't ready for commitment, that I needed space. But he'd already bought a ring. A $8,000 ring, Lucia added quietly. He showed us the receipt. I felt something cold settle in my chest. $8,000. Nearly 4 months of Sophia's current income, spent on someone who was actively deceiving him. There's more, Carmen said suddenly, ignoring the sharp look Sophia shot her. Marcus, you need to know about Ryan. Carmen, don't, Sophia pleaded. No, if we're telling the truth now, we're telling all of it. Carmen turned to me. Ryan was 3 months ago. Tech guy, like you. We did our usual thing, except. Except what? Except he figured it out, Gabriella finished. Not during dinner, but afterward. He must have seen us all leave together, or maybe he overheard something. Sophia was crying harder now. He confronted me the next week. Showed up at USC, found me in the library. And he didn't threaten me or call the police or anything like that, Sophia said through her tears. He just asked me why. Said he'd actually thought we had something real. The parallel to my own situation wasn't lost on me. What did you tell him? I told him about the money, about school, about being desperate. And he. She paused, wiping her nose with her napkin. He offered to help. Help how? Carmen leaned forward. He wanted to pay for her school. All of it. Tuition, living expenses, everything. Said she could pay him back after graduation, no interest. I stared at Sophia. And you said no? I said no, she confirmed. Because accepting that would have meant admitting that what I was doing was wrong. And I wasn't ready to admit that yet. So what happened to Ryan? He transferred to a different company. Left LA entirely, Sophia said quietly. But not before sending me an email with contact information for financial counselors, scholarship programs, legitimate work-study opportunities. He was trying to help you, I said, the irony not lost on me. He was trying to save me, Sophia corrected. From myself, mostly. And I threw it back in his face because my pride was more important than my integrity. Diana had been waiting patiently nearby, but I could see her checking her watch. We were definitely pushing the limits of restaurant hospitality. My phone buzzed with another text from Sarah, Mom's making lasagna and her famous tiramisu for Sunday. She's so excited to meet Sophia. Smiling face with hearts. I showed Sophia the message. My mom's making tiramisu. She only does that for special occasions. Sophia stared at the text, fresh tears rolling down her cheeks. Marcus, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry about tonight, about the lies, about your family getting excited. I'm sorry about David and Ryan and all the other guys who just wanted someone to care about them. She reached into her purse and pulled out her debit card with shaking hands. I know this doesn't cover everything, but it's what I have right now. I looked at the card, then at her friends, who were all avoiding eye contact. Then I made a decision that probably qualified as the stupidest thing I'd ever done. Diana, I called out. One check please. Everything together. Marcus, no, Sophia said immediately. I can't let you. You're not letting me do anything, I interrupted. I'm making a choice. But Sophia, I need you to understand something. She nodded, clutching her debit card. This isn't about the money. $720 isn't going to change my life. But what you did tonight, what you've been doing for 8 months, that changes people's lives. It changed David's life. It changed Ryan's life. And it was about to change mine. I pulled out my credit card and handed it to Diana. But maybe it still can, just not the way any of us expected. Diana took my credit card with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd witnessed countless dinner dramas. As she walked away to process the payment, I found myself staring at Sophia, who looked like she was trying to solve an equation that didn't have a solution. What do you mean it can still change your life? She asked quietly. I mean, I said, leaning back in my chair, that in the span of 3 hours, you've shown me something I've been missing for 8 months of dating. Carmen raised an eyebrow. What, that women are scheming financial predators? No, I replied, surprised by how calm I felt. That honesty is fucking terrifying, and that's probably why it's so rare. Sophia's friends exchanged glances that suggested they thought I'd lost my mind. Fair assessment, considering I just volunteered to pay $847 for the privilege of being emotionally manipulated. Marcus, Lucia said carefully, I think you might be having some kind of trauma response. Am I? I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my text thread with Sarah. Let me read you something. I found the message I was looking for, sent 3 weeks ago. This is what I texted my sister after my last date before tonight. Another one bites the dust. She spent 40 minutes talking about her ex-boyfriend's CrossFit routine. I'm starting to think authentic connection is a myth, like unicorns or affordable healthcare. Sophia winced. That's depressing. That's my point. Sophia, you've been running elaborate cons to avoid being real with people. I've been going on autopilot dates where we both recite our greatest hits and pretend to be interested in each other's carefully curated personas. That's not the same thing, Gabriella started. Isn't it? I interrupted. How many times have I described my job as building solutions for financial technology instead of admitting I spend most of my day debugging credit card processing errors? How many times have I said I enjoy hiking and trying new restaurants because that's what everyone's dating profile says? Carmen was staring at me like I was speaking in tongues. So you're saying Sophia scamming you is actually good? I'm saying Sophia breaking down and telling me the truth is the most real conversation I've had with another person in months. I looked directly at Sophia. Even if it started with you planning to rob me. Diana returned with my credit card and receipt. All set, Mr. Chen. Thank you for your patience with the situation. Thank you for handling it so professionally, I replied, adding a generous tip before signing. Marcus, Sophia said as Diana walked away, you're scaring me a little. This isn't normal behavior. Normal behavior would be calling you an Uber, blocking your number, and telling this story at parties for the next 6 months, I said. But here's the thing, I don't want this to be another story about Los Angeles dating being a nightmare. I stood up from the table, my decision crystallizing as I spoke. I want this to be a story about 2 people who are both so afraid of being vulnerable that they nearly missed something real. Lucia grabbed Sophia's arm. Sophia, we should go. This guy is having some kind of breakdown. No, Sophia said firmly, pulling her arm free. I want to hear what he's saying. What I'm saying is this, I continued, suddenly feeling more certain than I had all evening. Tomorrow is Saturday. There's a coffee shop called Groundwork on Rose Avenue in Venice. Basic coffee shop, no $85 champagne, no opportunity for financial schemes. Sophia's eyes widened. Marcus. I'll be there at 10 a.m., I said. If you show up, alone, as yourself, no environmental science persona, no backup plan, we can have an actual conversation. About Princess Bride quotes and your grandmother's surfing lessons and why you're really getting an MBA. Carmen was shaking her head vigorously. Sophia, this is insane. He could be planning anything. He could call the police, he could. He could what? Sophia asked, her voice steadying. Ruin my life. Carmen, look around. I've been doing that myself for 8 months. She stood up slowly, smoothing down her dress with hands that had finally stopped shaking. What if I show up and we have nothing to talk about? What if the only interesting thing about me was the mystery? Then we'll have terrible coffee and an awkward hour, and I'll know that authentic connection really is a myth, I replied. But Sophia, what if it's not? The question hung between us as her friends gathered their purses and coats, clearly ready to escape this psychological disaster zone. One more thing, I said as they prepared to leave. The spreadsheet you deleted, do you remember what you wrote about me? Sophia's cheeks flushed red. Marcus, don't. Tell me. She took a deep breath. Software engineer, 28, financially stable but not flashy. Probably lonely based on photo choices. Likes outdoor activities and cooking. Estimated 3-date potential before emotional attachment becomes problematic. Problematic how? Because, she whispered, you seemed like someone I could actually fall for. The words hit me like a physical blow. Someone you could actually fall for. I stared at Sophia, trying to process what she'd just admitted. Her friends were frozen halfway out of their chairs, probably wondering if they were witnessing a breakdown or a breakthrough. That's why you brought backup tonight, I said slowly, the pieces clicking into place. Not because you didn't care, but because you cared too much. Sophia nodded, fresh tears threatening to spill over. I panicked. 3 weeks of actually enjoying our conversations, actually looking forward to your texts. I'd never had that happen during a job before. A job, I repeated. That's what you called it. That's what it was supposed to be, she said defensively. Clean, simple, profitable. But then you sent me that photo of your terrible cooking attempt, and I found myself actually laughing instead of calculating how much sympathy would get me a second date. Carmen finally found her voice. Sophia, we need to leave. Now. This whole situation is. Is what? Sophia turned on her friend with sudden fury. Honest? Complicated? Real? God forbid we deal with something that doesn't fit in a spreadsheet cell. You're thinking with your emotions, Lucia said urgently. This guy could destroy us. One phone call to the police, one post on social media. One post on social media, I interrupted, pulling out my phone. You mean like this? I opened Instagram and showed them a photo I'd posted 2 hours ago, a picture of my untouched scotch with the caption, sometimes the most expensive lesson is the most valuable one. Hashtag date night, hashtag life lessons. Sophia's face went pale. You posted about tonight? Posted about learning something important, I corrected. Nothing about you, nothing about what happened. Just a reminder to myself that not everything that costs money is worth the price. Gabriella was scrolling through her own phone frantically. Carmen, look. He's got 1,200 followers. If he decides to expose us, then we'll deal with it, Sophia said firmly. But I'm not making decisions based on fear anymore. She turned back to me, and something in her expression had shifted again. The scared, desperate woman from earlier was gone, replaced by someone who looked determined and maybe a little dangerous. Marcus, before you make your coffee shop offer sound like some romantic gesture, you should know something else. My stomach clenched. What? Ryan wasn't the only one who figured it out. There were 3 others, over the past 8 months. 3 guys who confronted me after they realized what had happened. Carmen was making frantic throat-cutting gestures, but Sophia ignored her. And? I prompted. And two of them threatened to expose me if I didn't continue dating them. Real dating, they said. Give them what they paid for. The restaurant seemed to get quieter around us. Jesus Christ, Sophia. What did you do? I moved apartments. Changed my phone number. Had to drop a class because one of them figured out my schedule and started showing up on campus. My romantic coffee shop gesture suddenly felt naive and potentially terrifying. Are you telling me this to warn me off, or to explain why you might not show up tomorrow? I'm telling you this because if we're going to try honesty, it has to be complete honesty, Sophia said. I'm telling you that 3 men have used my financial desperation as leverage for sexual access. I'm telling you that my biggest fear isn't disappointing people, it's that every man who knows my secrets will eventually try to own me. The weight of her words settled over me like ice water. Around us, the restaurant staff were clearly cleaning up, waiting for us to leave so they could close. And you think I might do the same thing, I said. I think you're a software engineer who just paid $847 for dinner with someone who tried to scam you, and now you're asking me to meet you alone at a coffee shop, Sophia replied evenly. So yeah, Marcus. Part of me wonders what you really want. Her words hit me like a slap, and I felt my face flush with embarrassment and anger. You think I'm trying to manipulate you into some kind of sexual transaction? I think you're a man who just discovered he has leverage over a woman in a desperate situation, Sophia said quietly. And I think you wouldn't be the first one to use that leverage. Carmen was nodding approvingly. Finally, some sense. But something in Sophia's tone bothered me. She was watching my reaction carefully, like she was testing me. Like this might be another performance. Sophia, I said slowly, are you telling me the truth right now, or are you running another con? Her eyes flashed with something that might have been respect. What makes you think I'm running a con? Because 30 seconds ago you were talking about wanting to be honest for the first time in months. Now you're spinning a story designed to make me feel like a predator for suggesting coffee. I leaned forward, studying her face. Which Sophia am I talking to right now? Lucia shifted uncomfortably. Marcus, she's trying to protect herself. She's trying to control the narrative, I interrupted. Again. Even after everything that's happened tonight, you're still calculating how to manage this situation. Sophia was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was different again. Smaller. You're right. I was testing you. Testing me how? To see if you'd get aggressive when I accused you of having ulterior motives. To see if you'd try to convince me I was wrong to be suspicious. To see if you'd get angry and prove that you're just another guy who thinks paying for dinner entitles him to something. Carmen groaned. Sophia, what are you doing? I'm sabotaging, Sophia said simply. Because this feels too good to be real, and I'd rather destroy it myself than wait for it to disappoint me. The honesty of that admission was like a punch to the chest. Around us, the restaurant staff were making increasingly obvious closing up noises, but I couldn't move. So the 3 guys who stalked you? I asked. That was real, she said quickly. That part was completely true. But I used it as a weapon just now, to see if I could make you back down. And if I had backed down? Sophia's smile was sad and self-aware. Then I would have gone home and told myself that you were never really interested anyway. That it was all about the con, and I was right to keep my guard up. Gabriella was staring at Sophia like she'd never seen her before. You're really going to blow this up, aren't you? Even after he paid for everything? She's scared, I said, suddenly understanding. Sophia, you deleted the spreadsheet yesterday because you were already planning to sabotage tonight, weren't you? Sophia nodded slowly. I figured if I showed up as myself and you rejected me, at least I'd know. But if I showed up with backup and ran the con, I could blame the failure on the circumstances instead of on me not being enough. Not being enough for what? For someone like you to actually want me, she whispered. When I'm not performing environmental consciousness or financial need or mysterious vulnerability. Just me, with my student debt and my princess bride obsession and my complete terror of letting anyone see who I really am. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Dude, it's almost midnight. Are you alive? Should I call the hospitals? Midnight. We'd been at this restaurant for over 4 hours. Sophia followed my gaze to the phone screen. Your friend's worried about you, she said. My friend thinks I'm either having the best night of my life or getting murdered in an alley, I replied. Honestly, I'm not sure he's wrong about either possibility. Sophia laughed, and for the first time all evening, it sounded completely genuine. So what now? Do you still want to have coffee with someone who just admitted to emotionally manipulating you while confessing to emotionally manipulating you? I looked at her tear-streaked makeup, her wrinkled dress, her friends who were clearly ready to drag her out of there by force if necessary. I thought about my sister's excited texts, my mother's tiramisu, the $847 receipt in my wallet. Groundwork Coffee, Rose Avenue, 10 a.m., I said. But Sophia? Yeah. Come alone. And come as whoever you actually are. Because I'm pretty sure I like her better than any of the versions you've been performing. Sophia stared at me for what felt like an eternity, her mascara creating dark trails down her cheeks. Her friends had gone completely silent, probably calculating whether this was the moment to physically drag her away from what they clearly saw as a psychological crime scene. You want to meet the real me, she said slowly, like she was testing how the word sounded. Marcus, what if the real me is worse than any of the versions I've been performing? Worse how? She wiped her nose with a cloth napkin, leaving a streak of foundation on the expensive fabric. What if I'm actually boring? What if without the drama and the mystery and the financial desperation, I'm just another grad student who watches too much Netflix and hasn't figured out what she wants to do with her life? Carmen made an exasperated sound. Sophia, this is insane. You're talking yourself out of a clean escape. A clean escape from what? Sophia turned on her friend. From the first person in 8 months who's seen me lie, cheat, and manipulate him, and still wants to have a conversation. From someone who could ruin all of us, Lucia said urgently. Sophia, think. He has evidence, he has witnesses. He has my confession, Sophia interrupted. which I gave him freely because I'm tired of being afraid of the truth. Diana appeared at our table again, this time with a slightly strained smile. Folks, I hate to interrupt, but we really do need to close down for the evening. I looked around and realized we were the only customers left. The staff was wiping down tables, stacking chairs, clearly waiting for us to leave so they could go home. Of course, sorry, I said, standing up. We'll get out of your way. As we walked toward the exit, Sophia fell into step beside me while her friends trailed behind, whispering urgently in Portuguese. I caught fragments of their conversation, warnings about meeting strangers, concerns about my motives, suggestions that Sophia block my number and disappear. They think you're planning to blackmail me, Sophia said quietly as we reached the restaurant's entrance. Are you worried I might? She considered this as we stepped out onto the sidewalk. The cool Los Angeles night air felt sharp after the warmth of the restaurant, and I watched Sophia shiver slightly in her dress. No, she said finally. Which is either really good judgment or really terrible judgment. I haven't decided which yet. Carmen appeared at Sophia's elbow, keys already in hand. Our Uber's here. Sophia, let's go. Actually, Sophia said, I think I'm going to walk for a bit. Clear my head. Walk where? Gabriella demanded. Sophia, it's almost midnight. You don't even know this neighborhood. I know it, I said before I could stop myself. I live about 6 blocks from here. The look Sophia's friends gave me could have melted steel. Carmen stepped protectively closer to Sophia. Absolutely not, she said. Sophia, get in the car. Now. But Sophia was already shaking her head. You guys go ahead. I'll catch another ride. With him. Lucia's voice pitched higher. Sophia, you're not thinking clearly. This whole night has been the most honest I've been with another person since I moved to LA, Sophia finished. Maybe since college. She turned to me, and something in her expression had shifted again. Not back to the manipulative confidence from earlier, but not the desperate vulnerability either. Something steadier. Marcus, if I walk with you, just walk, just talk, will you promise me something? Depends what it is. Promise me that if you decide I'm not worth the coffee date, you'll tell me tonight. Don't make me show up tomorrow just to watch you realize you made a mistake. Behind her, Carmen was making frantic gestures toward the waiting Uber. The driver was clearly getting impatient, checking his phone and looking annoyed. I promise, I said. But Sophia, what if you decide I'm not worth the risk? She smiled, and for the first time all evening, it reached her eyes. Then I guess we'll both know where we stand. Carmen grabbed Sophia's arm one more time. This is literally insane. You're going to walk around downtown LA at midnight with a stranger who has every reason to want revenge. He's not a stranger, Sophia said, gently pulling free. We've been talking for 3 weeks. And Carmen? If he wanted revenge, he would have called me out in Portuguese 2 hours ago instead of letting me hang myself. The Uber driver honked impatiently. Carmen shot me a look that promised painful death if anything happened to her friend, then reluctantly got in the car with Lucia and Gabriella. As they drove away, I could see Carmen's face pressed against the window, still watching us with undisguised concern. Your friends think I'm going to murder you, I said as we started walking down the empty sidewalk. My friends think every man is potentially dangerous, Sophia replied. They're not wrong, statistically speaking. But Marcus, I spent 3 weeks getting to know you before tonight. The real you came through in our conversations, even when I was performing for you. We walked in comfortable silence for a block, our footsteps echoing off the closed storefronts and empty office buildings. Sophia had taken off her heels and was carrying them, padding along the sidewalk in bare feet like some kind of urban fairy tale. Can I ask you something? I said as we waited at a crosswalk. When you deleted the spreadsheet yesterday, what were you planning to do instead? I mean, how were you going to pay your bills? Sophia laughed, but there was no humor in it. Honestly, I hadn't figured that part out yet. I just knew I couldn't keep doing what I was doing. Even though you're $3,800 in a hole every month. Especially because I'm $3,800 in a hole every month, she said. Marcus, do you know what happens to people like me in this city? We make compromises. Small ones at first, just dinner dates, just letting guys pay for things. But the compromises get bigger. She stopped walking and turned to face me under a streetlight. 2 of my friends from undergrad are sugar babies now. Full-time, professional arrangements. They make enough money to live comfortably, but they're essentially employees. The word hung between us like a challenge. Is that what you were afraid of becoming? I was already becoming it, she said quietly. Just with extra steps and better marketing. Tonight was supposed to be proof that I could still maintain some distance, some control. But Marcus, when you started speaking Portuguese, when I saw that look of disappointment on your face. She trailed off, starting to walk again. What? I realized I didn't want distance from you. I wanted the opposite. I wanted you to know me. She laughed shakily. Terrifying realization when you're in the middle of robbing someone. We'd reached my street. I could see my apartment building's familiar entrance, the lobby lights still on for late returning residents. So tomorrow morning, I said, stopping at the corner, Groundwork Coffee. You'll really be there? Sophia looked up at me, her makeup completely ruined but somehow more beautiful than she'd been at dinner. Marcus, I need you to understand something. If I show up tomorrow, it's not because I'm hoping you'll rescue me from my financial problems. Why then? Because for the first time in 8 months, I met someone who saw me at my absolute worst and didn't run away. She smiled, that same genuine expression from when we'd quoted Princess Bride. Also because you're the first person who ever called me out on my bullshit in a language I thought was secret. I laughed despite everything. That was pretty satisfying, I have to admit. It was incredibly hot, actually, she said, then immediately blushed. Sorry, inappropriate timing. Sophia, I said, pulling out my phone, I'm going to text you my address. Not because I'm expecting anything, but because if you change your mind about coffee, if you decide this is all too complicated or risky or insane, I want you to be able to tell me directly instead of just disappearing. She nodded as my text appeared on her phone. Same goes for you. If you wake up tomorrow and realize you just paid $847 to get emotionally manipulated by a professional liar, tell me. Don't make me sit in that coffee shop wondering. Deal, I said. But Sophia, I don't think I'm going to change my mind. She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume mixed with a faint scent of tears and restaurant air. For a moment, I thought she might kiss me. Instead, she reached up and straightened my collar, a gesture so intimate and unexpected that it stopped my breath. 10 a.m., she said. I'll be the girl with terrible coffee shop hair reading Princess Bride quotes on her phone to calm her nerves. I'll be the guy wondering if authentic connection really exists. Marcus? Yeah. It does, she said softly. It's just fucking terrifying. As I watched her walk away to catch another ride, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. How did it go? Details please. Smiling face with heart eyes. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, ask me tomorrow after coffee. But Sarah? You might want to hold off on the wedding Pinterest boards for now. Her response came immediately, there's going to be coffee. Party popper. I smiled, looking up at my apartment building and then back down the street where Sophia had disappeared. In 12 hours, I'd find out if the most expensive dinner of my life had bought me the most honest relationship of my life. Either way, it was going to be one hell of a story.